With me today, I have four gentlemen who started their careers, or in some cases made part of their career at the North Star Research Institute in Minneapolis, Minnesota. To my right is Lee Rozelle, Craig Broden, Ken Cobian, and Don Streeter. How the thought process developed that led to development of the thin film composite membrane, which I guess the first one you made at North Star was the NS100?
Mm-hmm. NS1.
NS1?
And then we switched the name.
Oh,
Kept changing
but the
names.
other 99 didn't make it? Or?
Something like that,
Yeah.
no.
So how did you, did it come to somebody as a flash of brilliance, or did you sit around and say, how can we do this better, or what was the process?
It came to somebody, and that was John Cadat, who developed that polyethylene toluene diisocyanate membrane. And it showed so much resistance to chemicals and that sort of thing, and it also gave us great seawater desalination at fairly good fluxes. And it was really John Cadat who did this, and then went on to film tech.
He'd do stuff, and all of a sudden, like I said, he'd go back into his office, and I'm trying to figure out what this whole thing is, right? And whether I'm going to school and I'm not quite understanding what everything is. And he'd go back and he'd be talking to himself, writing and then writing in his book, and all of a sudden he'd come out and he'd go, I'm going to try something else. So then there he'd go, and he'd go over, and all of a sudden he just left him alone for about an hour or 2 hours. He comes back and he goes, we're going to try something. Mm-hmm. And then he'd go play, and all of a sudden he goes, I think I might have something. And then he'd go cast it, and then they'd try. He'd get Paulette or whoever, and they'd go and they'd start, all of a sudden they'd start running some flat cells. Mm-hmm. So there was all kinds of variations, and from day to day, you never knew what he was going to come up with, because he'd just stand there, and you were talking to him, and his eyes would go, he'd be starting to look all over like he had a different idea, and off he'd run. Mm-hmm. He was a different.
Now at North Star, you were casting flat sheet.
Yeah,
Yep.
basically.
Did you also make spirals? Would you roll spirals there?
No.
Just the tubular.
Yeah.
Just tubular.
And everything was, and they did run a lot of stuff on the flat cell.
Yeah.
And that was to try to get the flux up. But I remember all the time, and just like I kept hearing everybody screaming, like from Ralph.
Look at this. We can't know. The flux is so low. The rejection's great.
And Ralph was a unique, and it's too bad that he's no longer with us, because he would be perfect in an interview like this. It's like Don said, he just created stuff as he went.
Yeah.
And he dabbled in every project that we had.
When you started developing this membrane, you got contracts from OSW.
Yes.
Was it difficult to persuade OSW that this was a step forward that because they were all concentrating on cellulose acetate at the time, mm-hmm. and they were giving a lot of money to Roga to develop cellulose acetate membranes. Was it difficult to persuade them that you had a better mousetrap?
No, it was not difficult at all. I remember going up there talking with Hal Padel and talking about our new membrane, and when we talked about the rejection and the flux and the fact that it was, I think the flux was fairly good, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought it was pretty good. The rejection was terrific, and it was good. It was resistant to chlorine.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That was pretty exciting to them.
Yeah. There was a chlorine-resistant membrane. That's interesting, because that's been the holy grail ever since. But you actually had one.
Yeah, we did.
One of my assignments was to go down and collect sewage water out of the treatment plant and test our membranes against that. And the NS1 held up really good. NS100, excuse me, held up really good with all that abuse with the the microbiological environment, that we just ran continuously. And I exchanged water seawater or sewage water, regularly, and kept the bugs going, and it performed very well
We done.
with good flux.
Well, that's really interesting because it's, one of the drawbacks, if you will, of the thin film composite membrane, the non-cellulosic membrane, was that it had little or no chlorine tolerance.
Right, yeah.
At least the commercial versions of it did. You had one that was chlorine resistant right from the get-go.
And microbial resistance too.
I'll be damned.
Yep.
That's
Mhm.
interesting.
Then there was the balance of trying to get the flux to where you wanted
Yeah,
to
right.
with everything else. So there's a kind of a trade-off, and a lot of that had to
That's
come.
really interesting. Ken, you said you were casting tubular membranes.
Yes.
Was this for a specific reason, or was it just something that you were able to do there to?
Well, it was basically develop the membrane into a useful configuration. We started out with flat cells,
Right.
testing,
Right.
the basic RO test cell, and so we wanted to scale it up into some configuration that might be commercially available, or although we weren't a commercial outfit, but we wanted to demonstrate that it could be made into different configurations, to attract industries and the
what did-
government,
What
so.
what sort of material did you use for the tube itself?
For the tube itself, was polysulfone, cast from a 15 or 17, 15% DMF solution, polysulfone, Udel polysulfone.
One thing about John Cadott, we were talking about John, that I recall quite well. One is that as a research institute, our only product was a report. That's all we had as a product. And the report had to be good because we competed with a lot of people, as you know. John was our hero in the laboratory, but not necessarily in his reports. He didn't organize too well, and I always redid his reports. And I don't think he liked me for that particularly, but it was the only way. In fact, I was told by OSW that our reports were some of the best. I always made them as though they were, optimistic, because we were optimistic about what it was. It was honest. So the report situation was probably a problem.
When they started casting membrane at Film Tech, it didn't start as 40-inch castings.
No.
No.
They have a little time. One of the funniest things I can remember, we had a guy, Les Banner, you probably remember, brilliant engineer. Roy wanted a 40-inch element. We needed a 40-inch element. We cast 12-inch membrane. So Les designed a machine where we would have 4 rolls of membrane on different spindles, and then feed it through some razor blades that were mounted, and then it would split the membranes so they came up and met each other, and then we put a piece of tape on. So we taped all those rolls of membrane together to make a 40-inch wide. But then when we manufactured that or made it into elements, we had to put glue on every one of those seams. So the things came out looking like a dinosaur bone, just, funny looking things. But I guess that it was really interesting to go through that. But one of the unfortunate things about the whole process was these exposed razor blades. And pretty much every day I could hear Les Banner swearing on his way to the bathroom, leaving a trail of blobs of blood down. He probably cut his finger every other day. But made it through it, and then we started making 40-inch membranes like that. And
Would you do it again if you had to, and or would you go and make automobiles somewhere?
I'd do it again.
You would?
Oh, yeah. I love North Star. And I had another opportunity, and it was a very good one that I thought, so I took it. But the people, the technology, the successes that we were having, it was fun. It was fun.
Good.
It was a great company and good people.